I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive.
Convicted murderer Alec Murdaugh is still receiving letters in prison, from love notes to those who want to help him behind bars. Psychologist Dr. John Delatorre comes on to break down why this may be happening. Well, we have another strange update in the twisted saga of Alec Murdaugh. It seems the convicted killer, the man that a jury found guilty of murdering his wife Maggie and son Paul, and the man who was sentenced to 2 terms of life imprisonment, is still receiving love letters. Now, you might have seen this from when he was first convicted. He was receiving a lot of mail, but now there appears to be even more that he's receiving from last month. So let me read some of these to you from a Danielle from Las Vegas. Quote, "I am constantly thinking about you. I cannot help. I love you." From a Rachel, quote, "I'm just so sorry for your loss. I can hear it in your voice how much your wife and son meant to you every time you spoke on that stand. I don't believe you should be in that place." From a Rose, quote, "Checking to make sure you have commissary and money for your phone call purchases. Stay strong. Keep your head up." Actually, in another letter, probably because he never wrote back, Rose wrote, quote, "Know that there are people out here who believe in your innocence. As always, when you are ready for a friend, I will be here waiting." Let me bring in psychologist Dr. John Delatorre to make sense of all this. Doctor, it's not new. We've seen killers who receive this kind of fan mail. What do you think of this?
I think we need to get the large word out of the way, which is hybristophilia, right? I think a lot of people want to look at this and see, are these women getting sort of sexual gratification from sending these letters and having this kind of interaction? Some may be, but when I listen to these letters, what I hear are women who are wanting to have this kind of connection with Alec because they view Alec as having gotten the wrong end of the stick, as being on the wrong side of a judgment that they deemed unfair. There is certainly an aspect of caregiving associated with it, but I have yet to really hear the sort of overly sexual letters, and I'm sure they're going to be coming, but
Oh, doctor, I would you like to hear some?
I would,
because
yes,
I have some.
yes.
Now, let me tell you, they're not graphic, but let me just give you what some are. Okay, so there was another woman who wrote, I would bet I'm the hottest one you've gotten mail from thus far." There's another one. "People say I look like a beauty queen contestant." There was another woman who said, "I was compared to Jessica Biel yesterday at the gym." And then you have people who are begging for correspondence. They're actually seeming like getting upset that he's not responding. One writes, "Why are you ignoring me?" Another one writes, "I'm begging you to respond." Your take?
Yeah, because Alec Murdaugh isn't there, to just kind of get this kind of attention. However, the individuals sending these letters absolutely need his attention. And you're going to find that some of them are actually going to become more and more aggressive in getting that communication started because Alec Murdaugh isn't sending anything back. And so this is really about the individuals, right? Whoever's sending these letters. It's really about their need to connect. It's really about their need to have the attention from someone who had a high profile trial. And I think that's the key there, is that it was a high profile trial seen by millions, that I think now these individuals want to be included in some way and reaching out to him for this kind of attention.
I do find it interesting that there are some women who acknowledge the love letters, but are saying they're not them. They're saying, "I'm not weird like those women." I think there's one from a Katie who says, "Well, apparently you have women who have the hots for you. I'd steer far from them. I love that they create the separation." Now, maybe it's not fair. Maybe I'm putting them all in a bucket because there are some who are not professing their love, but they're saying, I think you're innocent. They want to help him with the commissary funds, and so that he can make phone calls. That I find so interesting from a legal point of view. There's a thing in the law called jury nullification. And basically, it's that forget the law, forget the facts. The jury is going to decide the guilt or innocence of somebody purely based on emotion or some other factor. Now, these aren't jury members, but it seems that these are people who maybe watched the trial, and despite all the evidence against him, they don't believe it.
Yeah, and I do think we need to start separating out who is doing what and why. Although there is an overarching aspect of it when it comes to attention seeking and caregiving, I do think that is a sort of umbrella, but then underneath it, we'll have different individuals who have their own motivations to connect with him. Because the real question is it Alec Murdaugh only, or are these individuals reaching out to other inmates and other detainees for similar kinds of issues? So they're just kind of, quote unquote, spreading the love around. And so I do think that it is primarily due to Alec Murdaugh having a high profile case, but some of these individuals could be sort of pen pals with all different kinds of inmates as that part of that caregiving aspect of wanting to make sure that they're comfortable, making sure that they have, commissary, making sure that they get whatever stuff that they're allowed to have in prison. So we can't lump them all into one bucket. And we can't assume that they're all doing it for some kind of overt sexual gratification. Each one has their own motivation, but I do think that there's an umbrella of caregiving and attention seeking that is associated with it.
Now, there's no evidence that Alec Murdaugh is seeing these or responding to them. Assuming he has seen it, why do you think he's not responding to any of these people? Because if he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, there's really not much for him to do. Why not engage in correspondence with people on the outside?
It's certainly possible that he's not the type of person that would do it, right? It's certainly possible that even in the world, right, that he's not someone that would actually be connecting with individuals in that way. But I do think that there's a level of adjustment that needs to take place when it comes to being in prison and having that kind of restriction placed on you, that he might not be in a mindset to respond. That doesn't mean that he won't be later on. But right now, I think he's got a lot of other things like, staying safe that I think he's worried about more than responding to emails that he's getting on his iPad.
And one other thing I'd like to, because I've talked about this topic before on other shows, and I never forget what somebody told me, another expert, that, people might like this kind of communication, this kind of relationship, because you're dealing with Alec Murdaugh, who's in a confined space. You can write him when you want. You can control him how you want. It's different than a normal kind of relationship. He's not going anywhere. And so there's that level of it's different. It's a different kind of relationship. You can control it as opposed to if it was a normal relationship. They know where he is. He's contained. Even if they believe that he's a killer, they don't feel in danger.
Yeah, absolutely. But then they have to be very careful because you just read a comment where the person was getting upset that he's not responding. So it's certainly possible then that she decides, well, now I need to show up to the prison in order to get him to get him to respond. So we have to be really careful with this idea that just because I know he's not out there running around on me, that means that this is a healthy relationship.
And one of the most disturbing aspects is that you have these people writing the letters who send multiple at a time and are not too happy that he's not responding, and they keep asking, did you get my message? Hello. It's just it's an interesting state of affairs, but not surprising he's getting more letters, and I'm sure he will get more. Dr. John Delatorre, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.